Oh, you know what? Some of this posted. Oh, you just log in IRC? Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
All right, so we got one more session. Varun is here from Open Curriculum.
Right.
And we've been talking about content. We've got lots of content coming in from different sources, and Varun came by. So Varun, well, I'm sure he'll talk about his work, but I should let you know he was part of one of the early Olpc projects in the island nation of Niue.
That's right.
Which their claim to fame was that they were the first country with 100% saturation.
All 500 of them.
500 of them had laptops. And so it was pretty amazing to sort of hear that and say, yeah, the experience from back then.
Where's that located?
Huh?
Where's it located?
It's in Polynesia.
Yeah. So,
one of those islands.
yeah. And I should also add that we're lucky to have him here because he was on his bicycle and he got hit by
a big truck, actually.
a big
What?
Yeah.
Just on the way here?
On the way here, I was at the back, basically kind of soaked my wounds. That's cool.
But he was meant to come and tell you about himself.
Exactly. So I deserve the extra attention.
Before you start.
Yes.
Before you start, make it a
Oh, yes, and once we finish the session, we have a follow-up gathering here in San Francisco at the Fighters. Just wanted to get a quick head count of who is expecting to be there. What time will it be?
Is this the dog patch thing?
Dog patch, yes.
Yeah. What is it?
1, 2, 3, 4.
We'll look after that. Just put up your hand if you want to come.
8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 12.
Okay, I'm ready. Thank you.
Oh,
okay.
15. Okay. All right, so we'll sort that out after the session is done. All right, thank you. With the lights.
Thank you for having me here. I'm super delighted and honored to be speaking to you guys about things I find very exciting. Sorry I could not be here earlier today with you guys. It turns out that there are 3 different education technology summits happening on the same day today. So I was at 1 in the morning, I'm at 1 now, and I'll be leaving right after the session. So I was told that, or what was suggested with this particular session was, let's not try to go for a lecture style stuff because that's too boring. And so the goal it shifted very much from my original vision on kind of prescribing how to think about content to actually turning this into the workshop. So we will actually have the lights come back on and I'll be making you guys move around and do stuff on your own. And I'll actually explain the vision and the goal for this, next 45 minutes. So it's very much reflective. It's you'll be very much thinking about and actively talking with partners that you'll be getting along with about the work you have done. And then I hope we will eventually arrive at kind of my goal for the session. My partner in crime who helped me put this session together, who's not here now, I'll basically be fumbling through his bits of the session, is Afnam. He was involved in Uruguay in 2011. And I'm sure you guys have heard a lot about what was done in Uruguay. Again, thank you for the introductions. I mean, a lot of people don't know about what happened in the earlier days in those little interesting pilotish deployments, and I was involved in UA in 2009. And I think the one thing I want back from that picture, apart from the EXO, is the hair on the head. Today I'm an executive director at a startup called Open Curriculum. Open Curriculum finds a lot of inspiration in the work that came out from the deployment in UA, from the learnings. I really don't want to bore you guys with that. I'm happy at the end of the session, if we have time, I'll actually talk about our work and how it draws inspiration from my involvement with Olpc. the big idea for these 45 minutes really is I want, it is a significant shift in what you've been thinking about and talking, but that was the core intention behind doing this, is to think about content and your deployments and your projects in a very different way. And the angle, the idea that I want you to be thinking about and taking away today is this, that projects will sustain and scale if and only if substantial measurable improvement in learning outcomes is observed, all right? So forget for the next 45 minutes anything and everything you know about the amazingness of these laptops, sugar, what One Education is doing, and focus entirely on this idea. And the reason I want you to focus on this idea is simply that I have a strong belief and a hypothesis. And that is that you will continue to be funded, that work will continue to grow, that software will continue to be produced, and the new iterations of hardware efforts will continue to come out if and only if we actually are able to measure learning outcomes that are good. And here's a few conditions when I say that. There are three irrespectives, okay? And the three irrespectives are irrespective of whether or not technology was used to its fullest potential. So we stop from talking about technology as a centerpiece of our conversations, but as learning content, learning objectives, and goals as a centerpiece for what we are striving towards. Second one is irrespective of whether or not every child uses a laptop. Again, too much of our conversations are revolved around whether a laptop was in every child's hands. Let's, for 45 minutes, push that notion aside. And the third irrespective is irrespective of whether or not network or server was in place. Again, the third technology component that we talk about a lot, we think about a lot. Let's push that aside and let's try to come to these points as needs after we've discovered them as something we are unable to do without them, as opposed to starting off as thinking of them as something we need to be able to achieve the learning outcomes. The last thing I want to say here is the only way, kind of the precondition behind the statement of projects will sustain and scale if and only if we achieve learning outcomes is that EXOs, or the larger Olpc ecosystem, must provide a superior experience in three things, all right? Remember this, jot this down, put it in your head, however you do it. Curriculum, instruction, and assessment, all right? If and only if Olpc creates a better experience in all of these, then it's possible without it. Until the point that without the use of technology and without the use of Olpc, we can achieve better curriculum, better instruction, better assessment, there will be no more better adoption and scaling of Olpc efforts. So our goal is we want to win on these three fronts, because if we win on these three fronts, yes, sir.
As compared to, you're saying better than.
Yes. We need to win. We need to win without the EXOs and Olpc. Does that make sense?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I know what the current situation is and what the one we're trying to change, and the means we're trying to change it with.
Exactly. So I'm basically saying the only way they will scale and sustain, as opposed to the only way we'll be able to bring them in. The only way they'll sustain and scale is if what we have done with curriculum, instruction, assessment, with the existence and incorporation of EXOs, exceeds what happens without the existence of that. Does that make sense?
As measured by.
Nobody's measured that yet.
But as measured by. For example, in Rwanda,
Yeah.
the measurement is the ability of the students to take the 6th year-end national year-ending exam.
That's what Director wanted to decide.
Exactly, and that's the purpose of our
Okay,
session.
but the rules of the game are you may not use your computer in taking that test.
Well, that's fine.
And that's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
Irrespective of whether EXOs are involved in the final picture or not, we have to achieve better scores. If Rwanda expects that the achievement or the success, the definition of success there is better scores, and computers are not involved in the test-taking process.
But that's not the measure, right? From Paul Kagami's point of view, who's the one, the president who said, let's do it.
Yeah.
He wants to create a workforce that has experience and knowledge in using a computer. But the education department, it's those scores. That's the only thing they care about.
And that's exactly the point of the session.
Okay.
I want you to understand, I want us to understand rather, the difference in the opinion of the stakeholders who are funding these projects and the difference in stakeholders who will be scaling and pushing this in every school. Because the visions of those two groups might be different. And sometimes they may be the same, but as you'll see, like when we start, literally the first thing we do in the session is we identify where that gap lies. Thank you, Doug.
Is he a plant?
No, that's the right question.
So our objective here, again, I think I said this initially, but it is to create a personal vision for addressing the content and learning needs in our projects, all right? The goal is not for me to tell you what you should be thinking of. The goal is for me is not for telling you, here's the thing that's missing in Rachel that you need to be doing in your projects, but for you to identify for yourself. And we'll be going through a 3-step process, all right? We'll be doing 3 breakout sessions. And the first, let's just get into it. Yes, you have a question? There's a question? Okay. Now let's turn the lights on if we can. And what we want to do is, do we have people here who have worked on the same project, 2 people who have worked on the same project in several instances?
What do you mean by it?
Oh no, I want it on.
He wanted it on.
We can't see the board.
Oh, okay. Is there one? Can I have
Yeah.
minimal light? There's technologists in this room.
There we go.
Okay, that's perfect. Okay. Now, do we have a split of a group in which people have worked together on one project? So how many of you have worked on the field on a project? Okay,
With Olpc.
with Olpc. Okay, so we have about 5 or 6. Yes. So these are going to be our 5 or 6 groups. And everyone who's not worked on the ground will work with the context of this person who was in the ground. All right? So if the people who could raise their hands quickly tell us where they worked, and then everyone who's interested in joining them just come and move towards them, we will be able to form the groups for the rest of the session. Okay. So,
Jamaica.
Jamaica, Haiti, Los Angeles, Rwanda,
And elsewhere, but Rwanda's where we should.
Rwanda and elsewhere, Tanzania. Okay, so I think you might have to come here, ma'am, so we can just do it like people can. Okay, no, yeah, I just want to physically.
Or just have everybody here, or?
Yeah, no, I just want people to have their own spaces. So the rest of you identify with the groups of people you might want to be talking with, doing the session with, and just physically move to where they are.
That was the theory, yeah.
So I'm glad you're here.
You get enough people spread around?
What groups do we have?
Rwanda's here, sure.
Anyone want to join Rwanda?
Rwanda, guys.
Rwanda?
Well, I'll come, I'll sit in.
Beautiful. Okay, so we got our groups ready.
You gonna join Rwanda as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sweet.
Of course.
Casey, LA, Tanzania, Rwanda, Jamaica. In the next 6 to 7 minutes, I want you to, in your group, answer the following questions. One, was the deployment? And here you're going beyond, it was in Los Angeles. You talk about it was in Koreatown, Los Angeles. You're talking about the context. You're talking about the geographical scope of it. I think, yeah, this is kind of similar to the first question. You're answering, what were the goals established? Here's where your points come in really clear. You want to understand who funded the project and what were the goals established, which could surprisingly be different from purely learning outcomes that you can achieve in your education system at that grade level or stage. Who are the stakeholders? What is the jurisdiction or education system followed in the region? What does the status quo of teaching and learning look like? So you want to identify Are the teachers well paid and highly qualified? Are they not qualified? Do they not even have teaching degrees or have gone through learning programs? We want to identify what subject and grade levels of work were you involved in, and what does the syllabus look like? Okay, and at this point, you'll have very, very different understandings of your projects within your groups. So let's just give 7 minutes to that, and the people who were involved majorly in the process could start the conversation, and other people could ask questions and get to learn about it. Okay.
I can try. I don't type very well, but I'll try to do as well as I can. I've got my computer open. I think I can answer most of these questions. First, Rwanda is a national program, so Rwanda wants to eventually equip every child in the country with they want to. So the deployment is nationwide. So geographical scope. Stakeholders, his principal initiative came from Paul Kagame, who's the president. But what's interesting is, of course, he turned it over to the Ministry of Education. And the Ministry of Education did its normal thing, which is they treated this as a bacteria. And so they isolated the project in a corner of the school, such that if you go to the ministry and ask about the Olpc project, because they go down to the groups on the first floor. So one of the big fundamental flaws was not formulating this project into the mainstream organization of the education department, where the inspectors are saying that the things are being used right, they're just as people are responsible for getting the things out there and textbooks. None of that was. And the second big thing that was a consequence was they hired computer people for this project who don't know any language to speak to educators and vice versa. So the only communication is once a year in the budget time. Project to go. So anyway, London does not have natural resources. So they have a project called Vision 2020, which is his project to upgrade the economy by 2020. Functionally, he feels there this rule and have a technical workforce that is capable of consulting to the rest of the I don't have that gold and silver. So his idea behind the Olpc project was, of course, his interest came at exactly the time of 25
What are the goals?
is to get these kids who then 10 years old, 10 years later, to be in the workforce with how But of course, from the Olpc perspective, so it's totally different. Because there's collaborative learning, exploratory learning, and so on, and there's the XO, which is about learning other subjects besides computer. So every year,
That's gonna be just about every.
yeah, the way it works is different, but yeah. So, the jurisdiction education system, this is also strange. It's fundamentally the French system. So when Haiti, I was looking at the document, here is wrong. About this.
The idea was
Realize that how they say the same words in French as the one that's in English. But the curriculum was the same sequence, the same word level, the same topics. So basically the French system.
Stakeholders.
And it's interesting because they're adjacent to Uganda and Kenya, which are British. And so they're sharing textbook custodian and so on, so they're getting some English coming in.
So you would sort of that standards would be.
Well, the jurisdiction is French. Instead of still teaching, get started with, teachers have a ninth grade education. Worse than that, the Ministry of Education, their employees are graduates. college graduates teach at the high school and university level.
And that's what
The Ministry of Education they care less what happens in grammar school.
because they have one unit.
Which again is where the sixth grade comes in, because kids
One
have
unit and that,
qualified in that university.
and one more keyword for them.
They don't have money.
The syllabus would be the secondary
Education.
There's one unit
One of our goals is by 2020, that they have free public education in grade 12. But to do that, they're gonna have to go huge numbers of classrooms, train them, teachers, huge financial investment because you're not. But teaching methodology is luxury. What's interesting is even at first grade, the kids have specialist teachers. So they sit in the same classroom all day, but every 40 minutes, different teacher corresponding directly to something.
This
That teacher is teaching that subject across 3 or 4 grades, they have 200 or 300 kids a day, primarily they have to deal with that. Curriculum in the physical budgeting, the target number of students in the class was 45.
Yeah. Pretty standard.
Yes, so budget for students by 2.
Yeah.
They have somebody that's about 60, that's somebody and so, one of the big problems is teacher is driven to produce the best possible skills on this national level. And the won't be a need where if the teacher is spending their time giving them exos,
Yeah.
so they're learning anything that's going to help them. So they don't get the teacher, the laptops don't go out at the same time. The only time they really come out of the box is if the
Now,
teacher.
one of the goals as established, so that it needs to be
So it's really hard if you want to close to the activities. They've never done class.
Is that somebody's phone or?
No, that's me saying time's out.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
So I gave you what the teaching.
time's,
The way the program is organized.
Maybe another minute?
That's a 7 minute.
yes,
Okay,
yes,
we haven't got down to the last one.
that's fine. I'll give you the opportunity in the next break. All right, let's reconvene. Okay, so for people who weren't on the ground, I want just maybe one group to tell me or explain to everyone what they learned about these things and what was startling, what was different that they did not understand, or is like, oh, I didn't expect that to be the case. Can anyone who was not involved on the ground share their experience or share what they learned in their group? So,
Well, I learned that the Biggin-Hoes were involved in a project, basically a walled community that consists of battered women and their children. So the Los Angeles Department of Education has a school within this. I likened it to a witness protection program because these people are walled off so that the abusers can't find them and can't continue to abuse. So it's kind of a unique situation. I'm very intrigued by that. But the Los Angeles School Department provides the teachers, and it's self-selecting to a high quality of teacher. The standard teachers, I guess, aren't interested in the encumbrances, and so So I think I've covered most of the first half or so. The content, what they actually have to do is teach the standard Los Angeles Department of Education curriculum plus do the emotional support for children and the mothers, and what all that involves. I can sort of imagine that these people are pretty emotionally kind of shell-shocked, or PTSD is the current word for that. So am I missing anything that I should?
I want you to answer. You said something very interesting about, you described the context, you described what their goals are eventually, what they want to achieve in what they teach in school. What were the goals of the program as established for OLPC? Or maybe you can answer this, ma'am.
Well, our goals were to allow them to provide, we were the first users of internet in Vermont. We have version 1.
Right.
And our goals were to provide the experience for the kids that they would have had if they couldn't use the internet, because as part of the protection, at that time, they were not allowed to use the internet at all,
Okay,
in case that the user would find out where they were.
got it. Got it. Beautiful. That was super interesting. Thank you. Thank you, sir. The goal of this first breakout was merely to understand the context. What situation were you doing your projects in? Who were the people involved? What is the setting here? What is the expected goals? And I think in a couple of conversations that I listened in on, I often, this is what I classically see or hear with Olpc projects. What are the goals, and what is the kind of focus on the goals of the education system and the teachers, and what the objective is inside the classroom is different from what the goals of the project are. All it is at this point is it's important to identify and acknowledge that those things can be different, and they can be different often, and they can lead to some of the most primary conflict you will have as you shape your projects and work in the future. Because eventually funding, growth, and support for your projects will come not from what some of the goals that the stakeholders give for you, because funders are often not the ones who are, the funders of these initiatives are not the ones who are going to fund the scale-ups, and what the goals of the education system are. So it's just important to think about this at this point. Maybe in the breakout too, you'll go more into the details of what is expected of them in the education system. Any questions at this point?
Maybe I'm the only one, but I still don't know what are the two things that are in conflict.
The goals of the stakeholders and the goals of student achievement.
So you're saying, say what the Olpc project people would like to do versus what the education system would like to do.
Exactly.
We had an interesting example. It seemed like in Rwanda, I forget what his name was, but he was
Kagame is the president. Yeah.
right, and he wanted to almost make a class of people that were computer literate as an industry,
Yeah.
as an end goal, which was
And that was in conflict with who?
conflict with just the natural education that you would have as a grade school.
Exactly.
I mean, you've got your curriculum to learn to read and write and do math, and over here you've got this idea that we're going to make this highly computer literate class of people.
So they'd have a workforce capable of operating in the 21st century is basically the way they would put it.
Yeah, but like not all kids are gonna grow up to be fluent in the right. So it's kind of like,
Mhm.
to use a different example, so a lot of schools are struggling with whether to fund their music programs, right? Not every kid is going to grow up to be a musician. And music has been shown to have many like benefits for things like learning math, but it can be really hard to convince schools that are already under-resourced to fund a program that's not essential to their core mission of math and literacy, and maybe you might get some STEM if you're lucky.
Exactly. That is, these are all classic examples of this disconnect. Maybe that's all I'm saying is identified at this point. Let's go on to breakout 2. In breakout 2, now you're diving a little deeper into specifically learning, into education system objectives. We're moving away from objectives of stakeholders at this point, because now we want to go into the direction of understanding what does the system expect of these kids. Once we understand what the system expects of these kids, what will support them in the classroom, what their school district expects, what their teachers expect, we can then start to identify how big of a delta or disconnect there is between what the system expects and what we are providing in our internet in a box solutions. So the questions I want you to think about or talk about or answer in this session are: how is student success, achievement, advancement assessed? All right. And so you're doing this in the context of the grade levels and the subject areas that you thought about or talked about. You're talking about how does the learning get assessed on an ongoing basis? So you're talking about, when are there assessments, how often the assessments are, and what is being assessed and how is it being assessed in the classroom. You're talking about what materials students use, talk about textbooks, talk about, I think
Well, he's on, so.
talk about materials teachers use, students use. So at this point, I want you specifically talking about the textbooks, what is inside those textbooks, how rotten they are or how new they are, and what technology is being used prior to LPC or if it's being used at all. What do learning targets look like? Often you won't have answers to several of these questions, but the point is, again, consciously think about it. Historically, what's been the achievement of the students? I think a couple of groups were talking about low achieving students in a low income public setting. Talk about this again. Without OLPC, what would the teachers say they need? Okay, forget that you're giving them something and convincing them of new value. Imagine you came in as an education consultant without technology and said, what do you need? Without OLPC, what do the students say they need? Forget that you're bringing in a technology solution. What is the social environment? What's the milieu? I think several of you talked about that, so this can be probably avoided. What do I need to improve, enhance the target student achievement in the context of the environment? I want you, all these questions lead to this larger question. If by the end of the next 5 minutes you can answer this question, that would be phenomenal. Is that clear? Okay, these are complex questions, but I want you to actively think about them. Okay, let's break out 7 minutes.
Usually what I notice is rich families, so whatever particular stuff. And then 4 months they're like, what can in a way it should perpetuate
So schools are organized in school districts,
but a lot of
there's 30 schools.
not really. I mean, we said if they had some stuff that was
Public schools,
format or something,
Catholic schools are also public.
split up on the laptops.
So they're funded by
It was all given to the government.
So
So
what they did was they picked some number of schools, each district picked one laptop to be in every district. Like, for from the point of view of each school, the highest scores for
So
the
the goal of the university was to get in there, different programs.
the school year,
Will help therefore,
and the schools are ranked.
impact on the score.
So the goal was not to put
Laptop that might be suggest.
and so the teachers are driven to get
We were hoping that they would have a lot of people that say,
I would
they should
sixth grade
see if I could establish
say,
a
no, kids that come in 2 hours every day.
Therefore,
Every school vacation every day. It's real good.
So it's not just general college.
They did actually
Mandated, so they go on to the local.
the history of that school is a lot.
They have to go outside.
Yeah, well, in March, every
Everyone in the country.
They all have equal access to,
Theoretically, yes.
That's
No one is officially in charge of anything very, very rarely.
So the one that's going on, you know, what was lost, they have no identification. It's very different because, when we went to the other told me that it's not just that we can do it, we system is laptop. In fact, is that, in fact, in fact, on the parents, because the parents work very hard to keep it secure, make sure this keep white, clean, and all of that stuff. Parents were like, hey, okay, about this. The parents looked at it, I'm so happy because now, so we figure all those things we official how these children are. But of course, if they have who's the literacy university, no matter how good the subject is, combination of all of that.
So how can the environment? My sense they're actually here, they're very active with it.
Right. So it's not so much that they have. So let's say we could say that computer will improve they could be and math workbooks.
So essentially, our interest in the parents would have to show us this.
Yeah, so I think it was with that book, you would not see a similar investigative into all those social aspects, all those concepts being good because, the community takes pride in the like it's really known for its pride to preach and these parents would these kids are happy and grateful for that, and I think that then has an impact on how the terms. And of course, the literacy does have teaching of that. So in a sense, without literacy university, they were not outside more than that. But the social impact is the campus.
So they have these final, they have a final exam here, even at the sixth grade. So that the materials.
So the purpose of that pilot was that once we did this, we would then turn around and subsidize the in
the fall, the
you bring in the money.
Let's kind of program.
A lot of that doesn't happen because the students are being
Kids simply do not get that. Only the only ones who have textbooks are the teachers.
So the government has, so not only has to expand the curriculum, they actually would like to go on to but we were like, I think, I think one very important point, and also the teachers use the context is,
They spend out of
40 a lot of just
minutes copying out
not see a lot of
the kids will copy into the notes.
because there was a lot of pressure to lock it up and we did a social experiment of sorts.
So learning
Cultivators come to the local churches, each child was given that laptop as part of the ceremony.
And so their organization is a
Where the parents put their names. I promise this is the laptop and their name on it. They put their name on it, they get a picture, the kid with the laptop, right?
And a new teacher comes in and takes
They
over
take that
the scheme of work.
and that just
And so the learning chart is that the kids will in fact.
I think it's a very important. Starting going to think, without seeing that, without intervention.
Okay, time out again. Time out again.
Yeah.
Tanzania.
These are difficult questions.
They are.
Answer to that last question.
They had a very interesting answer. Yeah. Tanzania. I love these kinds. This was great. Sorry, I messed around with your minds a little bit, but that's the purpose. I'll take 2 minutes of one reflection. I have an opinionated kind of bias for them to say because they have very interesting opinions, and then we'll jump out to the third breakout just to stay in time. But Samir, could you share some of the highlights? This was very interesting.
Sure. So we were talking about the project in Jamaica that we ran as a pilot, and we insisted that the laptop has to go home, and it took a lot of effort to make sure that that happens. But once the laptop went home, we saw that there was a big change in the social behavior because the families felt that they were given responsibility. This community is not known for a lot of good things, so people really are like, we don't want to go there. They're not good people. But suddenly they were given this responsibility, so families were very happy. The children were very happy that they were actually given this expensive thing to take home. The laptops were not just handed to the children. There was a big ceremony at the local church. There were pictures taken with somebody from the University of the West Indies, shaking hands with the parent, giving it to them. The parents were asked to sign a piece of paper, it was not a legally binding agreement, but it was a statement saying, I promise to take care of this, and and so they did that. And what we saw was that cohort of children outperformed many cohorts in their school in a particular test that they take at the end of grade 4. And so there was a significant change in their performance. They did much better. And we think that it's not just literacy and numeracy, but it's all of these other aspects of increasing their self-esteem and the behavior at home and all that, which then flows into their performance in the school. Obviously, if your literacy and numeracy doesn't go up, no matter how happy you are, you're not going to do well on the test. So there is definitely that, but we think that it was all the other aspects that sort of pushed it through.
That's a very interesting hypothesis. I hope Harvard makes a case study on that as well. It was very interesting. I hope you got to have some good conversations in that breakout. Now is the third breakout, which I think is the most interesting and important one, is where we tie it back. We come back to Olpc, where we tie it back to what we're doing on a day-to-day basis in our projects. And here's where we ask the most difficult questions. As you realize, the difficulty of questions keeps increasing. Here's where we talk about different kinds of content in learning and teaching materials. I want you to reflect on physical artifacts that are used within the schools, and also digital artifacts in learning. Specifically say, in Rachel, in Internet in a Box, this particular article, this particular learning video directed towards students, this particular exercise, this particular lesson plan, this particular worksheet. Talk specifically about the physical artifacts. Talk about what content exists out there in the offline OLPC world, right? I want to internally, in the context of the specific deployment project that you're talking about, talk about what related content exists offline. In a very good, clear example here, they said none of it actually exists in the offline OLPC world, but if you want to digitize it and we can put it on the server, sure. What content exists in the online world? What tools and applications exist out there on the web? So I think that'll be a very interesting conversation for Haiti to have, basically because you had done a bunch of work around tools for literacy, so you want to reflect on what tools exist for the problem areas that you identified outside of the OLPC world. So what does OLPC need from the world of the web? What do I not understand about achieving goals? At this point, your question in your mind should be, yeah, you've introduced this idea that we need to get student targets and goals. At this point, what are my open-ended questions? What do I need to accomplish? How can I bake in capacity into discovering, creating, and sharing content? So when you leave the field, how do you make sure the teacher knows how to get and acquire new content, how to create new content, and how to share it within their community? How will the needs of that phone be met? Please go ahead and check it. How will the needs of the teachers and students evolve? What might be needed in other subject and grade areas? All big questions, but in 5 to 7 minutes, sorry, it's funny, you can't possibly get the answer. Your goal should be to try to answer that question, which is getting covered. What is it that I need that I don't have easy access to for my project? All right. So after considering all what's there in the offline Rachel world and non-Rachel world, all that's on the web, and all that I know about the teachers and their needs and their education system, what do I need that I don't have easy access to. Because once you know what you need, you will actually go out to get it and support your projects better. So have this conversation now, and I assure you, you won't get past 1 or 2 questions. But try to get to the last question.
So what content exists?
Different kinds
We've
of
done,
learning and teaching material.
it's some of the offline stuff like that.
Just talking about the specific
got
school.
related by
And part of the
The
program.
national program is one that was 4th, 5th, and 6th grade.
some companies is basically coming in and
The
saying,
notion that Olpc had, and I had, is that, and so she's still learning those topics.
but they're
However, there's the educators that kind of think of the computer as a subject. So the kids should
there is
So therefore,
the
the
online
application
world,
use it.
with internet and it's pretty actually done very comprehensive set of
So
materials that they are.
So one of the different things that produced
The idea that it can sit good and they're most of
their job,
like
probably being able to teachers see the laptop, they'll take the extra effort and distribute it.
either or. So textbooks, for instance,
Yeah, it's a that's what they have
and stuff that go online, massive moving costs.
Now, as far as the content goes, to me,
The focus is also that they really work
with this, you don't have since they're spending all of this
so
time
really
drilling
this
this
has been,
to 6th
it's
grade.
taken us a computer out of the
I've told the teachers, just for kids,
and then work with work with the teacher and show
if they can do them up for 3 hours, don't pass that 6th grade exam, they're in 3 approachable.
Many things that happen.
So the children go back to again,
Usefully use the computer.
participate in that, and then now they can either make tablets or they're moving in that direction.
The nice thing about Tom having is it has a feedback.
So, I guess in terms of what he's trying to do here, looking at the gap, what Olpc has
And then each class
shows a lot of gaps in that.
They've done that really well, they've tried it, but not succeeded.
Let me put this over. It was a lot of work to take
They
anything
don't just see a glance. If they all turn dark green.
and put it in a way where you can
With those exercises, don't worry about it.
but they will just kind of the part is that in your mind,
The teacher's going to be doing it.
is thinking of it. Right, well, I don't appreciate that because they don't see how this works. No, but you know, what happens is, the private discovery-based thing, or just getting better at building things and
So that's.
having a better understanding when they help you, and there's a lot of good evidence, but clearly we did not see that. And that's how we're saying, yeah. So, you know, the hard part is that if you go to a system that has, pretty basic, there's a lot of hard things.
Big challenge is
When discovery-based learning
what will recommend in reality is what they have to conform on.
See the disconnect, and they'll concede.
the other model is yeah, so it's not in Well, after school or whatever, they have a. But it's not involved in any of the school programs. It's very difficult.
But I still think that
So, solely for the.
Yeah, well, we don't have a.
And, you know, this was one of the things that.
The way they look at what do they,
Yeah, they're not paid very much. So I guess, but we've got a very dedicated. He's really dedicated, he's not a computer.
then in just sort of, uncover the but you can still, one girl, she said, although she so, the EXO is one thing, with the interviews are audited day-to-day basis. So, but the interviews, what we do is we pull out another track of what the models are.
It's the first section,
Like, I would use the computers, how
be
many,
able to make better advantage.
so, we think about like, so these are quite so big. Well, those can take those things, and pull those to, so now, like, if I go to like, pull out all the responses, like, restriction, lots of kids open on it.
So was there, and that's what any
junction where
Well, there's no standardized
and the learning outcomes
Well, I would imagine.
If you have a study of people, they'll do much better because they're being paid attention.
Right.
So the laptops come in.
Maybe a gap between what I want, what's important to do.
Well, that's
Discharge,
And
they actually break down the school, like, it's got to make it low, and because the schools don't have.
you make that a gap.
So it is infiltrating in that culture. But not to, yeah, I would really.
There's the exam, there's also the history,
Bringing it out.
how the schools go on.
No, it's not just.
If I would do like government or villages like.
And that's because of the coming out. Quite different than the US.
Very different. In fact, the reason that process doesn't work is because I have family there. If I have to replicate this, it's the 500 days. Yeah, and if it does,
Actually going out and installing school systems.
So it scales in a way where we can involve in 3 or 4 classes. This sort of gathers know-how. So I would be very comfortable to say that providing a device like where all it knows at home has a tremendous impact for all the buildings.
You consider the one that's a teacher,
Recovery-based learning more structured.
their education centers more than the students. They're going to teach the way they were taught.
And
This is not school for everyone. Teachers know how to teach because they were.
Well, no,
It makes it really certain very much.
Yeah, so you look at it, it's when you are a CEO, we don't know. Well, one thing to say, we have to train or orientate, crash course. Well, teaching you what
Well,
they were sent to compensation.
but some of the ones that we work with so those are the reasons why I would say,
First thing,
even if I decide
it was just pure panic on their approaching the keyboard was.
No, listen,
The bomb, most of them didn't have most society, more cell phones, no cell phones. Yeah, but,
you know,
so they were doing very
yeah, I would say if I could compare the end of the work hour, who wants to use information, what we want to know was used.
I
would be inclined to.
Of course, the other thing I do lots of the educators is the third.
And try to fill that gap when more support is curriculum.
So if you don't know something about computer.
The experience was the other part, and it was so far apart that I would not even bother.
If you don't get nervous, you're being
In fact, what I would do when I was a kid is that I would go to the school and give them a couple of laptops.
So that message was really important.
But I'm not going to
So a teacher has permission not to
they
leave.
can have these laptops.
Okay, gonna call time.
I would not like to fill that gap.
I'm gonna call time. Tanzania time. Time. I'm absolutely loving the discussions. I think they're the right discussions to be had. I think the question or the big idea is being questioned. There's an argument around it, and I think that's the most fantastic conversation. What I heard a couple of places is identifying and understanding that the projects often fill a complementary need as opposed to replacing the primary need of student achievement. And that was like a hidden objective. If you identify that and know that and understand it from get-go, knowing where your projects sit and where they lie in the context of the education system is a very, very important thing to identify. Because then when someone questions you about your learning achievement, about your targets as you went in, you'll have a more informed answer. So that's exactly the thought process I want to provoke. The last thing I want to do, I know we're over time, but if for like 2 minutes, each group could reflect on their final thoughts on these big questions about, what is there, what is out there, what do I not have access to, what were the objectives, what are the objectives. If you could summarize the past 3 breakouts in the 2 minutes, hardest thing to do, that would be wonderful though. We'll start here.
One, it's very simple. Get the laptops out of the box and in the hands of the kids. That's it.
Beautiful. Is there something you don't have access to in terms of the goals of the projects or the education system outcomes?
The ability to influence the education system, which is French, built around final exams, national proctored exam, a whole complex of the teachers delivering to a whole class. So if you talk about a group project, that doesn't fly right from the beginning. They have no clue as to what a group project might be. So it becomes very difficult. And the adaptation, as we're starting to move toward an after-school program, is being where the focus of the laptops are being used, because that gets it out from under the mandated part of the curriculum.
It's beautiful. I was listening to your thoughts eventually, and I loved the questions that were being tossed here. And so you were asking very good questions. So keep at it. Tanzania, some reflections. Sorry, I'm just calling you guys by your places.
Sounds good.
Well, we have done that last curriculum now, and so we get.
But you will when you go back home.
Right, we do want to know more. I mean, its goal is to expose these then we need to know more about the curriculum, more about the lessons, curriculum, and more about the teachers and their goals and their methodology of teaching. So that's really
Beautiful.
At this point,
Yeah.
25 laptops have been already distributed, and it is being used as an after-school fun fest, you know, and I guess extremely popular.
Oh, good.
So when we go, we'll be bringing the next wave, more laptops, the servers, and hopefully lesson plans that will help the teachers do something more constructive.
Beautiful.
It's not just
Beautiful.
play. Playing is good, but there might be everything.
Those are some hard goals and questions to kind of think about. So I'm glad you're tossing that out.
Yeah.
Los Angeles.
Oh,
That's you.
sorry.
I just stopped up congested.
Sorry. We can come back to you.
You know, that's okay.
Okay.
That's okay. Yeah, we really need to assess, you know, they're using Internet in the Box version 1, and we need to go find out what it is that they'd like to have that they could have changed on that and get it updated. We also need to take a look at what the other schools in Los Angeles, how the kids doing, because they're every iPad for every child, you know, that didn't fly. So what are they doing? What are the other schools doing that these kids need to have at least an equal opportunity? And maybe they've already done better than this.
Yeah. I actually believe one of the best places to start off with our projects is going to the private school where laptops have been there for the past 3 years, see what they're doing, and then find the cheap, free way to do it on the laptops.
Good idea.
Yeah. Haiti.
Oh, since you were finding What is it worth to summarize to us? I think it was materials for distribution, right? Certain content that getting, there's actually getting the film and focus on the French, where I think there's also certain cultural traditions. I forget exactly what it was.
Okay. Does anyone else remember? Okay, just maybe summarize the delta. What is missing that you'd like to see? The reason I didn't make you guys speak before is I've heard you speak and you have a very strong understanding of the needs. So, no.
I guess a lot of the schools need the students or what I guess the parents pay for them to go. So
Got it.
there's a strong or that they're motivated. So fun is usually I guess not equated with learning. And I think the other thing she was saying that I'll have your
I'm sorry.
okay. So I was saying that she was doing a lot of the work herself, that hiring someone cost money, so she does a lot of it herself. So,
Yeah, we were really uncreative. We're just like the thing missing is money. But actually, like there is a lot of just in the past 2 years or so, there's been a lot of really great initiatives to make Asian video content available. But a lot of this stuff ends up costing money, and so when you're working with a school where the students are already struggling to pay the tuition, how do you convince parents that it's how do you convince parents and schools that they should start charging slightly more to pay for technology and things like that?
Beautiful. Jamaica man.
Will I report?
Yes, please.
So Samir's project in Jamaica has a very specific objective from the point of view of the school, and that's to increase the grades of the kids at the end of grade 4, and that has been successful in that they have in fact increased about 14 points. I don't know what percentage that is.
About
100.
Yeah.
100%?
No, so the total is 100, they get scored, and so
So it's 14%.
14 points, yeah, 14%.
14 points.
14
14 points on the base. Yeah.
So that's that seems very directly as if it should convince the school people that they should scale up and that they should continue and add content. But the question that Samir raises is it's not clear whether the increase in the exam is as a result of a direct result of the kids looking at whatever is on the laptop that they are interested in, or whether it is the placebo effect, not placebo, what's the term?
GE
The
effect, perhaps.
the effect of just the attention, the lateral, no, there's another term. What
No,
is it?
GE
Is it
effect.
Hawthorne?
The Hawthorne effect. Whether it's the Hawthorne effect, the effect that the kids do better simply because they got attention paid to them, and they were now they were the laptop kids and so forth. So they worked harder, they did better. That's a possibility. It's also possible that they had a direct effect, and it's also possible that there was an indirect effect by virtue of the laptops stimulating the parents and the siblings of the children to help them, and therefore to get to get better on the test. But what we didn't say is that because of these results, the Jamaican government has said, okay, great, let's scale this up and have more laptops. That has not happened.
Fantastic. That was really good of a summary. I've done my job of confusing the crap out of you. Thank you so much.
Now, all these